You're listening to the God Life Culture Podcast, where faith
and what's trending
collide.
Welcome to our latest episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. This is Eddie.
What's up, everyone? This is Miguel, and we are so thankful and excited that you are tuned in for another episode of the God Life Culture Podcast. If this is your first time listening, we want to say welcome. You have arrived on the last episode of the year.
You made it.
And yes, if you are a returning listener, you have also made it to the last episode of the year. Thank you so much for riding this year with us and, coming on this podcast journey with us. We just want to say, thank you, so much for tuning in week after week. Eddie, can you believe this is the last week of 2022? In just a few days, we are entering 2023.
Yeah.
How does that make you feel?
I mean, in the moment, it just feels like any other day. But then, I think of myself in elementary school, middle school, hearing the year 2023.
Oh, yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
That's such a crazy number to be like, oh, yeah, we're entering 2023. I think that as a jaded adult, it's kind of like, it's what or not. It's like any other year. But when you tap into that younger side of you,
right,
that, is expecting in 2023 jetpacks and flying cars and all that other stuff, you're kind of like, well, we're not there, but there are definitely advances in technology when you look, what was happening 10, 15 years ago versus now. So I think that. But, it's one of those things where it really depends on what avenue or lens you're looking at it from. If you're just looking at it from an everyday lens, it's kind of but then if you hone in onto something specifically, I think that it's crazy.
It is crazy.
Yeah,
I think time is going at a speed that is insanely fast. I just think I look back and just, a few years ago and just when I was a kid, it doesn't seem that long ago and all of that. It's just very weird, right? I think back just a few years ago with the pandemic that we had went through and, how that is years now ago, and it's crazy, and I think every year when we have this last episode, it's always an opportunity to reflect. It's always an opportunity to look back at certain things. And, for us, I think this was an amazing year. We started for the first time this year putting out visuals, right? Yes. We had been doing the podcast for a few years with no visuals. People, that were listening that didn't know us had no idea what we looked like, who we were. We were just two voices on SoundCloud, then worked our way to streaming platforms. And then now visuals everywhere, and we have had a few interactions with individuals who have seen us and a few interactions with people who are like, oh, I've seen your podcast. You're all over and taking over the internet.
You've had people that have seen me but haven't approached me. But people from other places, oh, I saw your co-host. He was at the farm. He was here. He was wherever.
Scary. My job, I was there too. Right.
Yeah. So
it's crazy.
Yeah.
Even just at the school I work in, right? All the students there will listen and check it out in the mornings and stuff. So, you're famous over there.
Yay.
And, they say things like, oh, Eddie's so chill. He seemed like such a chill person. And I'm there yes, but who's your teacher, right? Who's the one, right? And, but it's all good. And we definitely, I think, did it this year.
Yeah. And we were very, I think one of the things we are, as each year happened, we try to switch it up, try to elevate. Consistency is something that we're very proud that we've been able to do the last couple of years, especially when we first started. We were rookies. We had no idea what we were doing. We kind of threw ourselves into a world with no type of professional skills or anything,
right.
And we learned as we went, and we adjusted and we pivoted and we tried out a lot of things. And even last year was very successful with all the guests that we had, and we wish we could have also done that again this year, but we decided to shift gears and really focus more on the video stuff and learning how to really understand how to do that effectively to then start the whole thing with like satelliting people in or having people in-house and working on those different like camera angles and all that stuff as well. So it's we're very appreciative of the people that have been with us, that have gone through the journey with us. Yeah. And I think that it maybe hasn't been as fast as like maybe other people, how other people's journey and processes are. A lot of those people have a huge team behind them, or they have like certain resources behind them. And we're just two dudes kind of like working it. But I think that at the end of the day, podcast wise, it has been fun. It's been interesting to be able to like elevate in that way. And it's also interesting to see how we elevated for 2023.
Absolutely. And in 2022, in reference to like the guests and all of that, we also had a lot happen this year in the sense of like with our schedules, right?
Oh yeah.
Things that we've shared, things we haven't shared, things that we're working on, things, that people don't know and all of that. So, there have been weeks we've had to double up. We at one day did 3 episodes, you know what I mean, when we were in the summer and going on vacation. So like there was a lot happening where scheduling guests would have made it more complicated, right?
Absolutely.
And when we do those interviews with guests, right, it's not just our time, it's their time as well. So, making sure we're making the most and the best out of their time and the time they're taking out to be involved and be with us, it's a lot.
And it takes a level of preparation. We have never had a guest on where we had no idea who they were, what they did, what was the material that they had, or anything like that. Like we would do research, we would do analysis. If you had a music video, we
were looking at it.
Yes, like we had a whole theory and all this stuff.
Certain people were stumped by the questions.
Right? We were very in depth and prepared, and a lot of that takes time. And I never specifically said on the podcast that I had gone back to school. Right, I went back to school. I was going for a certification, which I got and I passed, and I did what I had to do. But that also now took captive 2 days out of the week. That
one of the days where we would record most of the time.
Because then the day switched halfway through when we got into the next semester and stuff like that.
We started recording on weekends.
Recording on weekends, and it's like we have a lot. It's a balancing act. We're not just two single dudes who can do whatever we want. We're both married. I have kids. We have church responsibilities. We have families. There's things that have to get done. Laundry. There's like. The bane of my existence,
right?
It's like we have so much that has to get done, that because of the level of respect that we give to the podcast, it's not something that we can just let's take 2 minutes and just throw it out there and kind of do it haphazardly. It's something that needs time, dedication, and attention.
Absolutely. And it's something like you said where we have had a journey where, like I said, we haven't started, just started doing this. There are people that think we just, started this year. We have over 140 episodes right now. This year alone, we put out 43, right, of those episodes. And we have over 140 because there's still a bunch of episodes we haven't uploaded from season 1. So we still have, I want to say, about 15 to 16 more episodes that were on SoundCloud when we released it, but aren't on the streaming platforms now. That, one day, like we normally do, we gradually throw them in there. But again, it's just something that I've always said with anything I do, I always go hard. I always give 100%, but I always look at longevity, right? I know of individuals who start projects, who start things, and they start with all of the equipment, all of the money, all the budgets, all of the guests, all of the this, and they're only doing it for 3 months. And then it's like, what happened? Like you had everything, like, you know what I mean? And it's difficult, So for us, we started out slow. We didn't have any of this, right? We literally took a room within our church that was not being used and transformed it. We painted it ourselves. We put it together ourselves. We, researched and got the equipment and what would be best and all of that. And, and we're still elevating, right? And next year we have other things that we're doing to make this better and the visual better and all of that. So it's something that, again, I always look at the long run. It's not a race, it's a marathon, right? So it's the idea that, we're not competing with anyone. We're not trying to, do certain things to be better or anything like that, but we know our benchmarks, right? We know how we want to grow, and that's kind of, you know, been our goal, to grow through all of it, you know?
Yeah, and I think that we've also been realistic with what we currently are able to do because of all the extra stuff that we have going on in our personal lives, where, you know, if we didn't have certain things going on, we could dedicate a lot more time and do a lot more different things. So, you know, with each year that comes, we graduate and gradually, you know, the ante here, but we also have to, like, you know, pivot it to what's currently going on in our personal lives as well, which is ever changing. It's ever changing what's happening.
So for this year, like we said, we had over 40 episodes that you can go back and, you know, listen to and check out. You know, I think back to our first episode where we, you know, we started the year talking about the Mike Todd situation, right? With him spitting in his brother's eye, right? In his hand, onto the eye.
It was saliva.
That whole thing, right?
Yeah.
And that seems so long ago. It really wasn't, right?
Yeah.
But it was just funny because I remember, you know, just that week we had like put the room together, right? And all of that. And I look at little moments like that, and I look at, you know, things that we kind of set out to accomplish and things that we set out to do that we did. And, you know, I encourage those listening that, you know, the goals that you know, set out to accomplish in this next year, right? See it through. It's going to be difficult. There are going to be moments, you know, of difficulty. I mean, we also, you know, went through it as well, right? There were a lot of uncomfortable moments that we experienced, a lot of, you know, uncomfortable moments within some of the topics that we presented, right? And you know, some feedback that we would get and things that we would hear and things like that. But then, you know, all of the good and all the positive definitely would outweigh those things, you know? And it's just one of those things where you have to expect, right, to feel opposition or feel resistance, right? Not just maybe from people, but also just from the enemy and spiritually, right? Whenever you set in your heart, in your mind to do something, there's always going to be pushback. There's always going to be an attack that, you know, the enemy throws at you so you don't thrive, so you don't make it, so you don't continue with that dream, vision, and purpose that God has given you. But it really is up to you to push through those difficult moments, right? So I think, you know, with anything that you are a part of, whatever ministry, organization, team you are a part of, you are going to have to learn the power of resistance, the power of persistence, the power of pushing through, even when it is difficult. You know, there were moments where we would come and we really didn't know what to talk about, right? And it would almost seem easier to just not record and not do anything. But even in those moments, we would come up with something, right? And we would push through and we would talk and we would see, okay, let's talk about that. You know, there were moments, to be honest, with certain things that we would say where, you know, we talk and we say a lot and we're very honest on here, but then we also talk behind the scenes and we know each other's lives kind of outside of this, that it's almost like we would say certain things and then afterwards, you know, it's almost like it's hard to really like, okay, do I believe that? Do I believe what I just said? You know what I mean? And it was a challenge even for myself, I'll speak personally, just in, you know, believing what I was saying and making sure that, you know, I'm not just speaking just to speak. You know, I actually believe the things that I'm saying and the things that are coming out of my mouth.
Yeah, and I think that, you know, and especially when we hit on the subject of sometimes we wouldn't have, like, we wouldn't know what to talk about. It wasn't because there wasn't content to talk about. There's always content. There's always something that you can grab onto and, you know, make a discussion out of. I just think that, you know, there are things that our viewers don't get to see. There's situations that are happening personally in our lives and things that are going on that at times we are dealing with. That's really what it comes down to. We're dealing with stuff, you know, and because of the fact that we try to be as authentic as possible, you know, there's times where we may have had a topic that we were going to talk about, but personally, is kind of like, yeah, but I don't know if I feel that.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know if I 100%, you know, because I also want to talk from a place of conviction.
Yes.
You know, a place where what I'm saying resonates because you feel like it's truth, and not because I'm using terminology or Christianism, you know, to tick off a box. It's kind of like, no, I'm speaking this because it's something that I believe in, because it's something that I've experienced. It's something, you know, like that whole shebang. So there were times where we kind of had to motivate each other to kind of be like, no, you know, and there are times where personally, as you're speaking and you're like giving this advice or giving, you know, this point to the world, to the masses, it reverberates back to you, and it winds up speaking to you.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
You know, I think the idea of you listening to yourself say certain things is so important, right? But one thing that we have done well is the idea of being vulnerable, right? I think, and you know, I edit a lot of the clips and the reels that we post, and I look at and listen to them, and I see how many times we say things like, you know, I struggle with that. Or I mean, I have sometimes asked myself that question. You know, there are moments in my life, right? There are times where I have felt, right? I don't think in my life, and we always relate it back to us.
Yes.
You know, where we've never come from a place of, you know, we've got it all together, we've accomplished, we've made it, this is what you need to do. We always bring it back to a place of, we're in this too, right? We have felt that way too. We have questioned God. We have doubted God. We have, you know, felt moments where we felt like we didn't have peace. We've experienced moments of loss and heartbreak, or, you know, different moments of hardship, right? So I think that, you know, coming from a place of vulnerability as well is something that is, you know, ever progressing and ever moving for us, right? I always want to speak from a place of transparency and vulnerability. And, you know, for my very first poetry album titled I Know What I Speak Of, I titled it that because I wanted people to know everything I'm talking about, I'm not just speaking about it because, you know, oh, that would make a good, you know, topic, or that would be a good conversation, or a good, you know, poem theme. It's like, no, I've lived that. I've thought about that. I've gone through that. I've experienced that. I've, you know, struggled with those things. So I think at the end of the day, transparency and vulnerability in whatever you do, being authentic with what you do is super important. And that's what gets people to really relate to your message and relate to what you're saying. You know what I mean? We have said a lot that I think I don't hear a lot of people say, you know,
Very true.
you know, things that even just listening back, I'm like, man, but no, it needs to be put out there.
Yeah, and I think that that's, you know, part of it. The idea of it is to start breaking that ice of, like, there's this facade that I feel like a lot of times, you know, as Christians, we put that we have to be, you know, all together, like, you know, that crazy faith. That's really like this fake persona that we put on, you know, when someone asks you how you're doing, and instead of you being like, oh, you know, I'm going through it, maybe you're having a fantastic time, and that's awesome. You're like, oh man, it's going great. Or there's times where we are struggling, or we are going through moments that aren't as great as before, but we always say, but I'm in victory, or I'm in this. And, you know, we created a culture where we have people who are suffering in silence and think and drive themselves crazy because they think that they're the only ones that are feeling those things. And I would hope that any time that I've expressed, you know, anything that I've questioned, or any moment or a situation that I've been through that wasn't the best, it's because I want to project out there that these are the type of conversations we need to be having. You know, when you're in a group setting, when you're in church, when you're in a Bible study, when you're in a Sunday school, when you're in conversations with your friends, there should be a open door for people to have a moment of vulnerability. That doesn't mean that every time I get together in the middle of Panera Bread, start crying,
whipping out the tissues.
No. But it means that if anyone is feeling anything, that they can either A, express it themselves, or if somebody in the circle picks up on something and asks them like, hey, is everything okay? What's going on? That they use it and sees it as an opportunity to have these honest conversations, because we know that following Christ is not easy. This walk is not easy. Yes, it's very rewarding. Yes, at the end, it'll be all worth it. But in the meantime, we want to make sure that we're not leaving people behind, that we're leaving people on the side of the road suffering because they need somebody to give them a pick-me-up, but we're too busy focused on, no, we need to make it, and we're leaving people behind. That's not the way that it should be.
You know, one of the things that is so crazy in thinking about this, you know, when we first started this podcast, I'll never forget, we were on our way back from picking up the suits for my wedding, or looking for suits for my wedding, and we had the conversation, the initial conversation at that time, and we started in just a few months after that. Right. I wasn't married yet, and I was getting married in a few months or whatever. We had started. So that was kind of like a season, and then going from there to then being married, right? And having to adjust how we record and when we record and all of those things and in all of that. And it's just crazy when you work on something or you start something and then you go through different phases of your life and you begin to see how you evolve or how you change over time. I often compare this to when, like reality show stars, right? I always say I'm so jealous that they have so much footage of their life that they can look back on 20 years from now and be like, oh, look, and show family and whatever, although a lot of times they probably don't want to show people, right? But it's the idea of, man, you've captured so many moments, and on a platform like this and what we've created, we have captured so many different moments throughout the years, and, going from, again, just, not being married to being married. And then, now just a few days ago, I had, shared with the world, right, that me and my wife are expecting, right? And it's something that is crazy to think about, right? And amazing all at the same time. But being able to kind of have like this consistent platform, right, and this consistent marker for growth, right, where I can look back at certain moments and remember just certain situations, you know what I mean, and just remembering just even this year and throughout the journey of what it was like and all of that, just certain episodes we did and certain moments where I personally started off this year, I think you think every year is going to be an amazing year. I think every year you think it's going to be really good. And I think you never expect the bad, right, to happen, or you never expect, the unexpected, I think you don't want to go into a new year being like, I wonder what challenge is about to go down now, And I started off this year going through something that I really didn't see coming, didn't expect, would have never thought would have happened. And, it really was a situation that I think was meant to do so much damage, by the enemy, of course, who was kind of like behind all of that, and that's his goal, and just messing things up. And it's sometimes so hard when you go through moments like that, when your faith is already messed up, and your faith is already bruised, and your belief in God is already wavering, and your doubt is already growing, and your questions are getting longer, and your emotions are already high, right? And then you go through a situation like that, unexpected. It makes everything worse, especially when you go through it and it's only been 4 weeks into the year. You're like, what is happening? And I remember just, for a while, just having these feelings of just kind of like, my faith didn't need this. My hope didn't need this. My strength, the little strength I had, right, didn't need this situation to happen. But like we said earlier, you still have to push through. You still have to continue to show up. You still have to do what you're called to do. Though not perfect, and though not, 100% put together, you try your best, right, to continue to move forward in spite of those difficult seasons. And it's like I start off this year, in disbelief, starting off this year with, challenges to my faith and to my hope and to just my belief, to now, being able to say that I'm ending the year differently, right? Not, 100%, not 100, we're never going to reach that area of perfection, but, where a faith has been strengthened and a hope has been strengthened within me. And it's something that I encourage people listening, right? It's always, when you're in the waiting, it's always hard to hear people when they come and speak like, God did it for me, he can do it for you. If God did this, he just wait, right? It's always difficult to hear those type of things, right? But when you yourself, then experience it and go through it, and you've been in the waiting and you've been in that process, and then you make it to the other side where you see a fulfillment, or you see a promise, or you see a blessing and a gift from God that you have been given, it's almost like everything else you went through begins to get smaller. Because this year, when I think about this year, you know, what I went through at the beginning of the year and that situation is really the last thing on my list, you know, and it's something that, you know, it's a blur in comparison to what has happened. And it's almost like, man, if I would have known what was coming in just, you know, towards the end of the year, or if I would have known what was coming, you know, I would have done this differently. I would have done that differently. I would have been encouraged. I wouldn't have not let this situation take over, these emotions or this or that, right? And it really gets you to a place of just appreciating, you know, what God has done in your life. So 2022, right, for some may have that same story where it started off rough. It started off where, you know, you just didn't see coming what came and it was unexpected. And maybe you're ending the year great and something shifted and changed in your life, but maybe you're ending the year and it's still bad and it's still dark. You know, even in that, you know, I urge you and encourage you to push through and not give up, keep going, keep growing. And when that thing happens and when that moment comes for you, right, it will be worth it. And everything you went through will be a blur. And it will be a reference point for you to know that, yes, God is faithful, you know. So I didn't want to get all deep and all into that, but I think I did. But anyway, right, I'm just super happy and grateful. And I know that 2023, you know, will be a lot. Will be a lot.
Absolutely. And I think that, you know, it's important. And you said it yourself, too, where we, you know, everyone's journey for the year has been different. There are people that started off the year strong and are kind of ending in maybe not the best place. People who had the reverse, had a really rough beginning of the year and now are kind of ending like really happy. And then there's other people that are kind of like still going through a situation and still going through a journey, kind of like in the waiting, in the middle, and, you know, whatever terminology you want to give to it. And I think that that's where I would categorize myself. You know, someone who is the year definitely was crazy. The beginning of the year was horrible. There was a lot of stuff that happened. And am I ending 2022 exactly where I want to be? Absolutely not. No way. No. Are there things that I'm still waiting on? Are there hopes and prayers that I'm still like, Lord, don't forget about me. Don't forget about this. Lord, help me, you know, fix this or accomplish that or get to this place. Absolutely. You know, and just because it's the end of 2022 doesn't mean it's the end of the journey for me. You know, it's kind of like, well, it's this was part 22. Next, we're going to start part 23, you know, and it's kind of a continuation of a process because not everyone, everyone's journey is different. You know, there's some people that they will get it within the 12 months and there's other people that they won't. You know, for whatever reason it is, they're not going to, their solution, their prayer, their petition, the thing that they want to happen, the thing that they want to get fixed didn't happen by December 31st. So does that mean that January 1st comes and you give up? Absolutely not. You can't. You have to keep going. You have to keep pushing. You're hearing the voice of someone who's making that decision actively to be like, you know what? I didn't get what I wanted. I didn't end the year the way I wanted to. I didn't achieve the stuff that I wanted to achieve, but I still believe in a God who could make it happen. I still believe in a God that could fix it. I still believe in a God that has the ability to. So why not wait on the promise? Why not trust in the process? Why not give it 110% even when you don't feel like it because you're so upset and you're so angry and you're so frustrated? You know, you just have to. And it's one of those things that sounds so difficult to do because your feelings are strong, your humanness is strong, but that's where you really have to put on, como se dice, ponte el cinturón, really like adjust yourself and make the active decision to continue the journey forward.
Yeah, and I love what you said because I think we can get caught up in the fact that it's the new year, 2022's over, 2023 is coming, like it's the end. And you said something that was so powerful. It's not the end. The end of a year does not mean the end, right? The end of the year does not mean the end of your story or the end of the promise that God has for you. And I think that when you look at the end of the year as just there is a new start that is coming and there is a new beginning that is coming, it's all about your perspective. How are you viewing this culmination? Because it definitely isn't the culmination culmination of your life, right? Or the culmination of what you want to happen. There's still time, there's still hope, and I believe that God is still, able to work. And, for then those individuals who, are ending that year strong and ending the year with receiving what God, had promised them or what they asked for, or just, they're ending it on a great note, always keep in mind as well, right, that even those individuals still have areas to work on, and still have things that, one area of their life may be thriving now, but they may still have 15 other things that are still like in the process and in the works, right? But this one thing that maybe worked out, or this one thing that maybe, God granted them, or God is working in their life, I pray that it gives them strength to realize the way God did this in this one area for me, he could also do this in this area. The same way God answered me here, he can answer me there. The same way God met me here in a low place, in a low moment in my life, God can meet me in this dark place, and just knowing that, again, like you said, the end of the year does not mean the end.
Yeah, and if you're one of those people that sometimes feels emboldened to give God a deadline, and the deadline you gave to God was the end of January, I keep saying January, the end of December 2022, and it didn't happen, listen, scratch it out.
Yeah, because it's like, first, it's like, who are you to give God a deadline? Yeah. And I speak to myself, who am I to give God a deadline? You know what I mean? It's like, how dare we?
Yeah, it's like, get over it, and get over it quickly, and don't allow that to be a block for you, or a stagnant moment where it won't allow you to enter 2023 with the perspective and the mindset that you need to in order to achieve your goal. A lot of times, and I'm guilty of that as well, where I'm like, Lord, I need it to be by X date, or I need it to be by this time, or whatever, and that time came and went, and I have to make a decision. Am I going to sit here and frown and be upset and be like, I'm walking away, God, or be like, you know what, all right, who am I to give you that deadline? Kind of like, swallow your pride and keep it moving.
Absolutely. So definitely, we just want to say, thank you as we wrap up this last episode of the year. Thank you for listening. Thank you for joining us on this ride. Thank you for coming week after week, for watching, interacting, engaging, listening to the podcast, sharing it. Thank you. Thank you.
Oh, well. Yes,
because this is a mutual, effort and thing that we both do, and it's something that I can do this by myself, right? You can do this by yourself, if need be, right? There have been moments this year where it was like, are we gonna have an episode this week? Because, and it's like, I could easily come on here and speak for 30 minutes. You could easily come on here and speak for 30 minutes, right? But it wouldn't be the same, and it wouldn't be what the God Life Culture podcast is. So I think that, obviously, I say thank you to you because you are a big part of this. And in just the same way, the listeners and those people who are watching week after week, right? We do this week after week. So definitely, thank you.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. And, obviously, we have to say thank you to you as well. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, we have a synergy that I think works well. And that's why we see that translate in a lot of the other projects that we do together, and a lot of stuff that we've mentioned on the podcast as well. And I think that at the end of the day, we're replaceable. Anybody's replaceable. That's not to say that we're irreplaceable. But I think that what we do is different and special, and it works for us because it's us. So thank you for that. I appreciate that. And I do want to say that if you haven't already, you need to subscribe, because, we are going to be taking a little break. We're going to be throwing out random stuff here and there in the next couple of weeks.
And we do that every
January. Every year we take off January mostly to get things in order. But it is important that you have the alerts on. That way you can get that notification once we drop a little special something, and you won't miss it.
Yeah, and like we said earlier, we're always looking to elevate. We're always looking to be better, bigger, and greater. So definitely, be on the lookout and stay tuned for how we are going to execute that in 2023. And Happy New Year. Hope you enjoy this season. Hope you enjoy this time. Go back, catch up on all our episodes, scroll all the way down to season 1 and check it out.
Yes.
And we shall see you very soon.
Yeah, and if you follow us on social media, make sure to like everything. Like if you haven't, go back, make sure that heart is red. If it's not and it's empty and it's cold, fix it. You have the power to do that. So happy New Year, and thank you once again for tuning in to the latest episode of the God Life Culture podcast. That's God Life Culture. Until next time.
See ya.
Bye.